What's up, guys? Coach Justin with RYU BJJ. Super excited about today's episode here with the great Hunter Claggett. Thank you for being here, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I'm all right.
Yeah, you've been a legend in the local Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA scene for decades now. And you want to take a second to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about maybe your competition background and some of your achievements and accolades and what brought you to the sport?
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks so much for having me. And I started a long time ago. And like you said, legend. And the first time we tried this, you said fixture. And those all sound like things that have been around a long time. They're old, But I think that it's funny because anytime you spend a long time doing something, you're going to know people in that sport, right? You're going to know people who've been doing it a long time as well. And in a weird way, like the people you see when you first start training in martial art, like these people who are these old masters in your head, right? These guys who are like untouchable wizards. You realize like 20 years down the line that was just you. Like guy who just has been doing this for long enough that it's like, oh, who are the people running tournaments? Guys who have been around, like people, fighting and fighting as pros. It's people who've been doing the sport a long time. I started in 2003 when I came to college here to Western and Bellingham, and ended up graduating with a BS in mathematics later on in 2009. But I started in 2003 doing Kung Fu, some Filipino martial arts, a little bit of Muay Thai, and eventually when my coach had access to a blue belt who was in town, a little bit of Jiu-Jitsu, but it was pretty basic at the time. I think this is an era when availability of someone with a black belt was pretty limited to major cities, right? Like even in Washington State, it's pretty hard to find someone who had a black belt then. But a few years later, my Sifu moved to LA to become a stuntman, which is as he was graduating college, right? So I was freshly into school. I was a freshman. He was a senior, right? So to me, he was like this, adult. But looking back at it, he's a kid too. And actually, as an aside, his name is Michael Friesen, and he was a jiu-jitsu black belt, and he had an MMA career as well. Wow. He has owns a couple of gyms in Colorado now, so you should see how it's all kind of like full circle. In any case, though, I started training with Charlie Pearson, Landon Showalter, and Eric Wiseman here in Bellingham at a karate school that's local to town. They were just running their program up here. And it really opened my eyes to what martial arts could be, which is like a real thing, right? Where you're actually are doing the thing you're supposed to be doing, which is fighting. Because that was what really characterized, I think, at least the nature of the way that it was taught. Because I think Michael Friesen, he was someone who cared about teaching things well, about pedagogy and about realism, but he was teaching the martial art as an art the way he was taught it to him, right? So, I think that if you're teaching in a traditional scripted sort of way, right, with a lot of kata and practice of form, then it is an art form in of itself, right? Where, because everything exists on a continuum, right, between martial and art, right? Sure. Unless you're actually stomping someone's head in, or bayoneting, that's
sure.
The full martial, right? Zero art.
Yeah.
You go all the way to the other end, you have things that are more balletic or about, showing your ability to reproduce the traditional movements, right? And I think that's what's cool about martial arts. You can have everything in between. In any case, sorry, I tend to go on a little tangent,
I love it.
So,
That's perfect.
But so I started training with Charlie Pearson with this kind of fighting focus at that point, and I also got introduced to Japanese jiu-jitsu and some Brazilian jiu-jitsu from JT Taylor. So he was a Japanese jiu-jitsu black belt and a Brazilian jiu-jitsu brown belt at the time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so he was teaching at that school as well. So I was doing that. I remember one of our local black belts, his very first class when he came in. It's funny because at that point, I basically, a couple years later, I was fighting, and I just stopped doing the gi, and I never did again. It's 2007, I think, was the last time I put on a gi until about 2015. And in the meantime, I was just doing, grappling. I was doing, no gi jiu-jitsu, but it was always submission wrestling, because the positions and the focus in MMA is very different. The guard game is a lot riskier and less, I think, emphasized for good reason. The playing guard in MMA context is very difficult, and fraught with a lot more danger, right? And it tends to be, at least it should be, a positional kind of like a transitional position or a stalling position. I can get into all that in another instructional, but with only a few more payments. But and so that was a game I really had to learn when I started doing jiu-jitsu again. Later on in 2015, 2016, Lennon Showalter decided he wanted to run a gi program at our gym. And that was also the year I ended up purchasing the gym for my coaches, 2016, along with my wife, Laura Carter. And we ended up moving to this current location where we're at now. And that kind of catches us up. So that was also at the start of my professional career in MMA.
Okay.
So because I was doing amateur fights the whole way through, from 2007 to 2016, and that was when with the gym, now that I owned it, it was time to get my pro career out of the way, right? And it's funny, like my coach, he tried to retire me a couple of times. It's funny because every time he'd be like, "Hey, we should go out for a beer," I'm like, "Nah, I'm busy, can't do it," and I'd be like, because his whole thing was like, look, once you had a couple of wins, I lost my first fight, won my second fight as a pro. He was like, look, you're done. You got the win as a pro fighter. You don't need to like beat yourself up. You should be focused on your business. And I think probably he was right, but I was a proud 30-year-old man, and I'm like, look, I got a lot more to give.
Yeah. You wanted to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I've done a number of these interviews with a number of people, and they all express a love of doing jiu-jitsu, just the process of it, the training, all that. Did you find the same thing with MMA? Did you embrace the grind in the same way, or was it more something that was punishing and hard to do? But
yes, and both. Like it was all that. I guess I think if you're doing a sport like this that's this hard, that's this physically demanding for a long time, you have to be something of a masochist. Like you kind of have to like being sore and like being beat up a little bit, like especially as a new small guy, right? Like I was always strong for my size, so that helped, but like not strong objectively, in the course of all human-sized humans. It's also, if I can knock on wood somewhere here, if I have any physical superpowers, I tend to be fairly durable. My major injuries were pretty rare. Like I've of course injured ACLs, MCLs, LCLs, whatever. My meniscus on the right side, 2 AC joint separations, bulging disc, or C5, I think.
So this is a relative scale. For the people at home, this is MMA fighters like this is nothing. I'm good.
But like what I say about no major injuries, I've been durable, is that I've been able to come back. I think because I'm willing to do the work. Because that was always what I loved. I loved grinding in the gym. I love spending time getting really tired. Like I always think that like it was something that like always confused me, that people would be like, oh god, this workout makes you really like tired and like I hate it, and I'm like, why? It's like you're getting really exhausted. This is great. This is what you're here for, right? It's like that's what you want, that feeling of pure exhaustion.
Sure.
And just like really enjoy the work, right? That's always like I hate fighting. I always kind of hate it, and I love it. It's both, right? Because like it's even with competition now, because now that I'm not fighting like in MMA or kickboxing, and when I say that, and I always have these like hems and haws, because realistically no one's ever really done like all these like guys who are older who are coming out and fighting. It's like either it's enough money comes around or the opportunity again. They
just get that itch, and
because honestly, if someone came to me and said, hey, you could fight in Japan in 3 months and we'd fly you out there and pay you anything, I'd be like, yes, thank you.
When you got to compete at a fairly high level all over the place, you did Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds, I think, at one point.
Twice now.
And you got to travel with fighting. It's taking you places, I think, to some degree.
Yeah, I was able to fly to California. I fought in Palm Springs for CFFC. That was my 3rd professional fight. It was... and I think it's something that I've told my students recently. I was telling the guys actually yesterday here during our fighters training that I've never been the best competitor, like in a weird way. Like my fight career, if you look at overall, like actually it's funny, like striking record's better than my kickboxing. It's better than my MMA record. But overall my 50-50, my career in my weight class. I fought as high as 145.
Okay.
And I walk around at 140. Wow. On a healthy diet, drinking beers.
Right.
So like, it's so it's a, I've been always keen to fight. I was always the guy because my coaches also ran fights, like promotions. So there would be like, hey, Hunter, it's Friday night. Guy dropped out of a fight. You want to fight? Yes. I used to carry cup, shorts, and mouth guard in my car because I'd be like, because I'd go to see my teammates compete. And what if someone dropped out?
Wow.
And I said earlier that I kind of hate fighting, and I always did, because it's terrifying. But I felt a need to do it because I'd never been in a physical altercation, as a young person, and like, you have ideas about who you are, the idea that like, how you would react, and if someone got in your face and swung at you, and you like, if you would be able to hold your own. And my goal was to see if I could, right? And then when I found out, it was kind of fun, and it's terrifying, and it's like, because it consumes everything. When you have a fight coming up, there's nothing in your mind besides that date. Whatever it is, coming up, it's coming up. Gotta train, gotta move, gotta train. And everything in your life is organized around that, and everything becomes really simple. And it's even better is when you're fighting, because all of your anxiety drops away, and it's just pure reaction. And that's a moment that I found truly addictive. And I think, like, it's said about psychedelic drugs that they can show you the top of the mountain of like meditation, of what your brain can do to itself, because that's all they're doing. It's not like, they're really causing your brain to release chemicals, right, that affect you a certain way. So your brain can do that. Theoretically, you can make it do that on your own. That's the Timothy Leary idea.
Sure,
right?
sure.
So I think fighting is so much pressure, so much adrenaline that's pushing you there. Can you achieve that kind of like awareness of your day-to-day life in something less stressful, like maybe a jiu-jitsu competition, because in my opinion, and flame me in the comments, but like, a jiu-jitsu match is not a fight, right?
Sure.
It's okay, and it is a contest, it is physical, and and I don't have any issue with people who say, my jiu-jitsu fight this next weekend, or my jiu-jitsu fights, because it can be very physical, and if you've ever rolled hard, someone who understands the use of a collar tie,
it can be punishing.
Striking is kind of still part of it, but I think unless you're like, someone can knock you out, that's an expectation of the consequences. Like, that's a real fight, right? And like, that kind of intensity is tough to replicate. And I think a jiu-jitsu competition is just not as stressful, right? To me, at this point, right? Having done so many MMA fights, like I fought 34 times between amateur and pro kickboxing, MMA. Wow. And it sort of sucks to be that it ended the way it did. And they'll give you that story. Like, I decided I was 36. I was going to be my last year fighting. Like, get my real run at it, see what I could really do. Be super serious the whole time, because that was always my issue. Is I was dividing time between coaching and running a business and being a competitor, and it's tough to do. And then you have a family, you have a kid.
It's a lot to balance.
It's a lot, yeah. So I wanted to really just say, like, okay, my family stepped up, took care of everything with the gym. They're like, you basically can teach classes a couple days a week, and you're gonna be training, right? 2020 February, my first fight, did great. I was very happy with my performance. It's a really tough fight against Howie Tan. He's kind of like one of the top guys in my weight class from Canada. I've been a big fan of his for a long time. Got to fight him. Not to be too long, but I ended up I think out-grappled him throughout the fight, and then made some mistakes. He caught me. It was a TKO loss, but I felt really good about my performance. So I was like, okay, off to a decent start. Didn't win, but COVID hit, and that changed things for me. And I think it really forced me to stop and reassess my values and my actual priorities, because when you really stopped and I thought about it, what I really cared about at the end of the day was my family and my students and my gym and my being the best coach I could possibly be. And as a competitor, my heart hadn't been in it in a while, at least in terms of MMA. And I think once I kind of had that realization and went through all the trials and tribulations of COVID, reimagining myself as a jiu-jitsu competitor has allowed me to find more balance, and that's not just because not because fighting is not good for me. It's just that at this point my actual priorities are other places. I feel more comfortable entering myself into a competition where the risk is that I didn't tap soon enough to that armbar, even a heel hook. I'm realistically, you know, I've popped my MCL before. I'll do it again, I'm sure. You know
what that's like, at least.
Yeah, for sure, right? And like I've been down that road. So that was like my last actual fight. I was scheduled to do a professional kickboxing fight 2023 at War Kickboxing, but my opponent missed weight. I gave him 5 pounds to start.
Wow.
We were doing catch weight at 130, and then he missed weight by 2 pounds, and so I didn't take the fight because I'm a professional.
Yeah, makes sense.
He was talking some trash, but it's fine. You know, I don't do that, and that's something people have always said about me. I don't talk trash because I don't need to. I'm here. You know, if you want to know who I am, you know, look me up. There's a lot of video. You know, I compete a lot, so you can see me most events. I'll be somewhere, you know, because I think that's really important. Like, and the difference between, I think, truly real martial arts and like not traditional martial arts, because those can be both things. You can be a traditional martial art and a real martial art. Between a real martial art that's like tested and like is currently alive versus like I think like a dead martial art that's like isn't tested, right? That isn't used.
Never pressure tested.
Right, exactly, yeah. Because like, you know, people would say, oh, karate is a traditional martial art. Well, there's Kyokushin. Right? Those guys are fighting.
Yep, 100% full contact. Yeah,
and it's cool. Like, and I love to watch it. So at this point in my career, I'm really happy just, you know, being able to grow in jiu-jitsu, and I still train with the guys. I was like doing hard sparring with the guys yesterday, you know, as long as I can, because that's the thing. It's like, you know, I'm getting older, man.
Sure, it does go away at a certain. Well, so that's a good segue then. So looking ahead, as you know, I assume you want to keep doing this as long as you're here on Earth.
I hope so.
Yeah. So with a mind to that, with a mind to longevity in it. In these physical endeavors, and with a nod towards things do just decline with time. There's kind of there's a realization that, you know, when we get into our 50s, 60s, or 70s, we can still be active to some degree, but it might not be the same as it won't be the same as when we were 20 or 30. How do you see your training evolving, or what ways do you see that changing for you? Yeah,
I mean, it's been an evolution, right? I think. The fact that I kept a really high training volume throughout my entire career, like I basically have gone, the longest stretch was 1.5 years when I finished college. I did take a little break from martial arts and I was miserable. So it turns out it's really important for my mental health. But I couldn't do both. Like when I was doing martial arts, it's really all that occupies my forebrain.
Yeah.
So it's like really tough for me to do anything else with any sincerity. But I've been able to be consistently active throughout the entire span of my entire adult life, essentially, in martial arts, with that exception. And I wouldn't know how to be a human without it. But your relationship with it has to change. Like, you know, I used to train every day, you know, at this whatever intensity I had to that day, right? And it really didn't matter to me. And over time, I have to learn, like, okay, so you need rest days now. I hit 35, I discovered that. So it's like you have like a hard training session, at least one complete rest day, right? And then the next day after that, it's like a drilling session, which if you're feeling really good, maybe some light rolling, you know? And then you kind of start the cycle. Then after that, you can go into a hard training session and you have your rest day. It kind of goes in that cycle.
Is all your training like specifically martial arts, or do you supplement with anything like lifting or running or biking or anything like that?
You know, I theoretically I lift weights. I have this plan and it's written down. There's sets and reps on that plan. How often I do it?
They definitely get written down.
Yeah, like life depending. I have a full-time job now. That's one thing that changed with COVID, and it's like there's pros and cons, right? Because I was a full-time martial artist and gym owner before COVID. After that, I have a full-time job working for the Department of Licensing here in Washington State, which is too boring to go too into in this podcast. But mostly, I'm a policy and law expert in the rules surrounding vehicle and vessel licensing. So it's as exciting as it sounds, and most of what I do is say, yes, you must pay taxes. That's what it comes down to.
Take note.
Right? Those are what the rules are. I don't enforce the rules, guys. Don't worry. Don't slash my car. I'm not in law enforcement. I know what the rules are. But if you don't like the rules, call your legislator. Call your congressperson. They make the rules. In any case, guys, But like I think like where I'm really interested in going is how to become a black belt, not just in jiu-jitsu, because like at some point, you know, my practice will end, you know, like my practice will be theoretical or in coaching only, you know, like I've, you know, we've been through elder care this last year with my wife's family, and, you know, seeing the end of life, I'm like, you know, at some point all things will end. You know, I will step on the mats for the last time. In my ideal scenario, it'll be, you know, I'm 105 and I step on the mats to do a new chemi, and then I just die on the way out, you know, and like that's it. But you know, we get what we get, right?
Yeah.
There's a local legend here in Bellingham. People call him Judo Ralph, and I've noted a pattern that people who do judo are known as Judo, whatever their name is.
Sure, yep.
Ralph is like 84 the last time I saw him. I think he's 85 now, probably. Still coming around. He'll pop in every so often to our gi class and just show us some moves. Like, he moves pretty well, but he gets on the mat, he's throwing people, like, you know, still doing judo, and he trains 3 or 4 days a week, which gives me like hope.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and he like showed me this really cool variation of Osotogari that he does because his hip doesn't hinge anymore. He can't really like do the full tilt aspect of Osoto, or like a reap is what he's saying. Yeah. So he like just straightens his leg, and it's this. I actually like it better, and that gives me hope too that like maybe my infirmity is actually a superpower.
Sure.
That like because every time I get hurt, like you know, I did my first meniscus tear. I used to shoot on my right knee for a takedown, and so I had to start shooting on my left because my right knee was hurt. And then when that got better, now I can shoot on either leg, right? And that's what I try to tell my students when they have their first major injury. Like when I say major, I mean like they pop their knee or their ankle really bad. And I try to tell them like, look, I am a psychopath, and that there's no injury that would allow me to keep walking that is going to stop me from keep doing this sport.
Yeah.
I've already kind of cashed my chips in as a lifer, and I'm like, look, I will pay any price for this feeling, right? You know, like my family has a lot of addiction in it, and I found that like my hopeless addiction is right here, and it's destroying my body. But you know, I like to think it's good for my spirit.
Sure.
But like I tell my students is like, if that's too much for you, you should quit now, right? Like you should not continue if like you're not willing to deal with this kind of self-imposed adversity, because that's what it really is. You know, you could avoid all of this, and that's what always struck me. Every time I was fighting, I'm in a sauna, dying, and I'm like, I could just change my phone number and never go back to the gym.
Just bounce.
And no one will ever know. I mean, I never have to tell anyone I've ever did this, you know? And it's such a small community, it's pretty likely, you know, really. Think about it. How many thousands of people do jiu-jitsu or martial arts in Washington State?
You could probably fade into the background.
Yeah, I mean, you may occasionally get outed, but, you know, it's a low chance. You move to Swiss or something.
Well, how about talking about, like, the emotionality of fighting, both the training of it and the actual competition day. Yeah, because I've you know, been around a number of MMA fighters, kickboxers, boxers, and in various capacities, either as a medical professional or just training partners or whatnot. And I've heard a lot of different takes on that. You know, some people are like, yeah, I cry before every single fight, or it's just, you know, I'm like in absolute anxiety hell for the 2 months before the fight, and other people are like, nope, this is just, you know, what I do, and it's not a big deal. Like, I've heard everything. I've heard the broad spectrum.
You know, I think everyone's a little different, but if someone tells you that they're not nervous before they fight, or they don't have some kind of anxiety, that they're lying to you, or themselves, right? Which is also important, you know. I mean, what we tell ourselves becomes reality, and I also think that consensus reality is extremely overrated. That, like, you know, us all agreeing on the same thing, we've all learned over the last few years that facts are really not that important. Like, it's how I feel about what you just said to me, right? Like, it's like really what does it actually matter. So when it comes to like training and stuff, when it comes to like, you know, the training for fights, I think, you know, emotional management is really important, and how everyone's a little different. Some people have to be kind of pushed up into their intensity of like both of their training, but also their like intensity and how they come. They're a little hesitant as innate by nature, and I think that's kind of me. You know how I was, and then I learned the way I carried my own momentum. But like, and some people you have to pull back. They're like a little too much, you know, too intense, too like aggressive, too emotional, right? And it's true in fight. You need like that creamy middle of controlled aggression, and it's really tough to find. I started off like way going aggressive. I came out just brawling my first 8 fights, stand in the center, throw hands until one of us fell over, and it was fun. But it's a crapshoot who's gonna win. So then I got a little more technical, got a little more calm because I calmed down finally and could actually be, because I'd never done anything physical in sports before doing it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, my first ever competition experience was a fight in a ring.
No way.
So it was a lot. I saw my vision went down to a tiny little tunnel on my way out. I was like, oh no! I'm gonna be that guy who passes out on the way out to the ring. And
but you did make it out to the ring.
I did. I won my first 2 fights, but it was all just luck, and they were tough. It was just swinging and connecting instead of swinging and missing, And I think when it comes to emotional management, that's been the toughest thing for me, because I'll swing between overconfidence and kind of recklessness and being a little too timid, too hesitant, and that's my struggle as a competitor. I think for students, you're all in that kind of balancing act, and I try to be really vulnerable and transparent to my students about it. I try to talk about my issues with that stuff because I think it's important for them to see that. And I've also talked to a lot of high level athletes, and they all really feel the same. I've talked to some world champions, and we have world champions at our gym now, and everyone, and this is something too, my wife, Laura, I'm co-owner, and she's also one of our world champions in jiu-jitsu. She won blue belt worlds last year.
Awesome.
Not 2024, 2023. But she went through a master's degree for art. Right, she was doing illustration, and she was doing new comic books. So it was cool. But during that whole process, she these constant racking, kind of self-doubt about oh man, I'm so bad at art. The feedback I'm getting is negative, and it's just not coming together. And then fast forward to me and my students, and now Laura herself having the exact same feelings about martial art. Right, because we are artists, right? And most of us are starving artists also, but at least if that's what you're trying to make your money on. Because it's all the same, right? It's all performative. It's performance art, really, right? But it's art.
Sure. So dealing with that imposter syndrome, maybe aspect to it,
As a fresh black belt, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, congrats on your black belt, by the way.
You.
I think it's well earned. That was 3 or 4 months ago, or
October.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, big congrats. Well, and that for somebody to go back to something you were talking about earlier, you completely eschewed using the gi from 2007 to 2015.
Yeah.
Was that? I guess the obvious answer here might be you were concentrating on MMA, but I'm curious in terms of do you enjoy the gi? Do you like the gi, or do you just like no gi better? Or
I think I'll always be more at home in no gi, because it's so much more comfortable. So many more hours put on the mat in it, right? And it's I think I had so the first time we went to Japan, I was a blue belt. It was 2017 actually, and I did a training session at Axis BJJ, which is always where I send people in Tokyo. He teaches so the class is taught bilingually in English and Japanese.
Oh wow!
And he's able to teach fluidly, goes switching back and forth continuously as he teaches in both languages. And I'm I can barely teach in one language, man. It's crazy, but it was he watched me roll, and I'm getting trashed by his other blue belts because he kind of paired us up by blue belt rank. And he comes up to me, he's I can tell that you think of the gi and yourself as a separate thing. And I'm oh, yeah. Because I'm always God's just grabbing my gi. It's not they're grabbing me, they're grabbing my gi, right? And it's when that went away from me, and I don't know when that was. I think somewhere in my purple belt career, rolling in the gi no longer felt bad to me, or as annoying, because I just suddenly was I understand the controls again, because I've forgotten, I now understand what they're doing. And it's also just I will never think I will be as proficient in that game as someone who specializes in it.
Sure.
And so I've rolled with people who are high level black belts in the gi, and they tell me I'm a purple belt in no gi, and I wouldn't go that far. I think you're still a black belt. It's just but it shows the skill variation, right? And the games that don't exist in no gi that exist in the gi, and vice versa. Or at least that are different.
Yeah.
But I just think I like both. I like the complexity, and it's also just something. It's an insurance policy because you can't ever let yourself get bored.
Right. Yeah.
Or at least bored for too long, because boredom is good. It creates creativity, but if you get bored of the training too long because you don't have enough variety, then you're not going to want to keep doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's true. Do you apply that same philosophy then to your students? Like if they just want to concentrate on no-gi and do that exclusively, is that copacetic?
Absolutely.
Or,
yeah, totally. Yeah, we teach everything. We teach kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, submission wrestling, judo, everything I know. I don't claim mastery of any specific thing.
Okay.
Really, I don't claim mastery at all because I think that's if it is a real thing, it's a goal or like a concept, right?
Sure.
I think that I have proficiency in a lot of things, and I really believe in teaching things that I have done in like competition, especially. I claim familiarity with a lot of techniques. But like those are, I always try to preface my experience with something when I teach it, and also the context by which it should be used, right? Like, and how I came to know it, because I think those are all really matter. Someone can say, hey, I learned this super secret technique, only works one day a year. It's a leap year. And but your heart will explode if I do it, and you'd be like, nah, right? But or someone shows you a throw that's extremely conditional, right? Like in these conditions, when their weight's going this way, this throw works great, right? You might say that's an accessory type movement.
Sure.
It wouldn't be a fundamental technique, maybe, or like something that one guy's good at. Like the buggy choke. Not that one guy's only good at the buggy choke, but like there are a few guys who are amazing at it, and I've met a few of them, and it makes me very annoyed because the guy just let me pass, and I get tapped out. I'm like, okay. Well,
yeah, I've been there. But it's a specialized skill set. It's not applicable to everyone.
Exactly. I don't think like in the same way that like. I think like so technique always has context, right? In the same way that the buggy choke also has a hard counter of being picked up and slammed on your head. So being allowed, slams being allowed changes the game, right? And so the buggy choke now becomes a silly thing to do.
Yeah.
Same like pulling guard. Pulling guard I think is totally legitimate. I don't hate on it. I enjoy the memes,
Yeah.
But like I think in an MMA context it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't exist.
Sure.
Because for obvious reasons. But like in a jiu-jitsu context, I think it's a perfectly legitimate way to play the game, and you have to, I think you should play to win. That's the other part that I've kind of, because you have to run into ego, because every time you get beat by someone who plays a points game better than you, everyone wants to say, oh, this guy just beat me on points, he didn't submit me. I'm like, well, he won though. I mean, you can say like, I've protected my ego in every way possible, in that like, oh, I was getting sick,
Yeah.
Oh man, my training camp was bad, which is also the worst one because like, why was your training camp bad, sir? That's a you one. That's a you problem. But it's just or like my favorite one, like the one I got to say this year was the guy who beat me won the whole bracket, which is like, I mean. Okay, but you still lost. So,
right.
And I think those are all legitimate things too, because they're all facts, and they're all designed to make you feel better about your experience. But you have to look at things objectively, right? And I think you have to say, did the technique work or not? And it's you have to take it to. For me anymore, I've gravitated toward a process-based approach, and like when I perform best, it's A, when I've been competing frequently, and B, when I'm focused on the process, not the result. Because like everyone, you go in, you think, okay, I want to win, I got to win. You think about getting your hand raised. That's the result, not the process, right?
Sure.
How are you going to get your hand raised? Is by, okay, I'm going to make sure that I keep my elbows inside, I guess inside grips or whatever your thought process, right? And when you're doing those things, that's when you're actually going to be winning, and you can be excited about that after.
So game plan would be a huge part, maybe.
No.
Okay.
This is for me. This is a totally me thing. I hate game planning. Every time I've ever game planned, I lose.
Okay.
And it's just pure because I get focused once again on a result of like I need to get this single leg, not like I need to wrestle or like.
Okay.
And the same way, like when I warm up now, I don't do jiu-jitsu at all. Like if people are like, oh, you want to like pummel, or I'm like, no, I'm just gonna do some push-ups, I'm gonna do some sit-ups, I'm gonna like do some breathing exercises and get in my head and get warm, and then I'm at. As soon as I start doing a specific movement, that's programming that in my head, and I don't want to do that. I want to react to what's happening.
Okay.
But that's me. That's also, I've had students who game plan really well, and that's their process, and I just try to discover that with each student, like how they're going to be. I've had students who like to be told every move, like teach me how to do moves in a fight, and it will work. Like they were listening to that level where they're going to be like on it and programmable. I've had students where it's conversational. He's like, I want to, we were talking about, he's like, hey, he's dropping his left hand. He's like, I see it. We're talking. He's like, I'm like, hey, you should pressure forward. He's like, hey, patience, coach. Like I got a plan. We're talking, and it's about each individual and discovering them, and discovering their relationship to this stuff. Because I think going back to programming and variety, right? The reason I think it's smart to have so many different martial arts to draw from and different things to play with is that you get so boring. Because like if I wanted to teach you to be good at something, right? I'm gonna be like, okay, you're gonna learn a double leg, you're gonna learn a jab and a cross and an overhand right, because those are the punches that tend to knock people out. You're gonna learn basic covering defenses. You're gonna learn what submissions do you like? What, a top position, right?
Sure.
You're gonna learn a handful of things. You're gonna just drill those every day. We're the gym that teaches these 5 techniques because those are the 5 techniques that win the most. I guess armbar technically wins the most.
R and C or the
right. You can basically or limit to those 5.
Yeah, sure.
If you want. But how many people are gonna want to do that for the next 5 years? Instead
exclusively
today,
that, yeah.
and then so this last week, this kickboxing class, I'm like, let's do all the weirdest kicks I know. Let's do spinning back kicks. Let's do side kicks because it's fun.
Well, so that's really interesting to me because I'm a fairly new coach. You've been doing this a lot longer, running an academy a lot longer than I have. But one of the struggles, and it's a really fun struggle. I think it's a cool thing, a cool problem to have. But when you have a wide diversity of students in terms of like their athletic ability or their age or their interest in actually competing or not, putting together a plan or a curriculum or like this is what we're going to do and being interesting enough for the people who are just with it and they've got fights coming up and the people who just started, like keeping everybody engaged is difficult.
Yeah, definitely. It's that's the task, right? That's pedagogy, and if we're gonna get into this, we need another podcast. It's I would go for another few hours. I guess we've gone through a lot of phases, and I think to me, it's not about what you're teaching. It's not about really, honestly. It's not about because if you want the latest up to date techniques, go on YouTube. At this point in the world, technique is not the issue. It's someone who is interested in constantly bettering your process. Right? Every time we go to a gym, we visit someplace, we're always looking at what are they doing that we can shamelessly steal to make our process better. But it's also because it's if they're doing something good, why aren't we doing it good? Sure. If there's a way to do it better, you should do it better, right? And that's one of the things that we've been emphasizing: cleanliness, the details of running an academy. It's all about those details, cleanliness, making sure things get put away. And they're small things, but they're things that are easy to let slide. And that's the biggest thing for me is making sure that you keep your attention, keep your focus. It's how you earn a Michelin star in a restaurant, right? It's not that you can make good food, but you make good food for year in, year out, and keep those standards, keep that process, right?
Consistent.
But on constantly improving, because I don't believe that things are ever static. Windows, glass looks solid because we are too fast. Or too slow. I don't know the way you look at it, but
we can't see the motion of it, but it's
liquid, right? Glass is actually a liquid. If you go to real old buildings, they're thicker on the bottom, right? The windows, because nothing is ever actually static. You're generally either shrinking or you're growing, right? So if you are striving for growth, if nothing else, you'll maybe break even, or you'll die out, and that's what happens, and that's how it sounds sad, but I think. Businesses should just go and they should go. I have a commitment. I will never run this business at a loss. If we go 2 months in a row where I lose money, I'm shutting it down.
That's it. Wow.
Yeah. And that's we've lived by that for 15 years now. Yeah,
that's a testament to you doing something right.
Yeah.
That's probably a couple of things. Let's talk about Bellingham MMA because I don't think we said the name at the beginning. Let's talk about your program here. So Bellingham MMA, you were the co-owner and the head coach.
Yes.
And you guys have been around 15 years. You said.
Yeah, 15 years.
So let's talk about your program, what you offer, and kind of your philosophies and all that.
I mean, we offer. I think basically. Practical martial arts and self-defense skills. And the martial arts we teach are Muay Thai kickboxing, judo, wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, boxing, taekwondo. Just where we derive the techniques, but really it's about putting those techniques together in as practical and safe and fun way as possible, right? That's what we're trying to do. It's an evolutionary process. We don't teach the same way that my coaches taught me exactly. We keep, I think, the spirit of it alive. But then again, my coaches don't teach the same way that they taught me now. You know what I mean? They've also evolved.
Sure.
So, I hope so, right? That's what you'd hope for. And, part of that's been a process together, but it's also through my students. And I think my favorite thing about being a coach is when someone asks me a question I've never thought of, and you learn something, you're like, oh, I've never actually thought of it that way, or I actually never thought to ask that question. Now I learned something about what I actually do, or I have a problem I now need to solve. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so exciting, and I think that's excitement has allowed us to keep growing. Laura's been a huge part of it. Laura's my wife and partner and co-owner, and if I have any advice for a prospective fighter or a young martial artist, it's that, and I've seen so many thousands of people come in here and say, hey, I want to be a fighter. I want to be a UFC champion coach. I'm going to be a UFC champion coach. You're going to get one of those belts. I'm going to get one for me on the wall. I'm like, okay, cool. The number one predictive factor is who they pick as a romantic partner. That sounds weird, but look at it this way. I was just talking to a young man about this on Friday, that your fight career can be from now until your late 30s if you're lucky. If you really want to have a good longevity and you stay healthy, you can maybe go into your early 40s. And that's very rare.
Yeah.
Your romantic partner hopefully is going to be with you your entire life, through your family, right? When it comes down to it, push comes to shove, very few people are going to say, no, baby, we're breaking up because I want to fight. It doesn't happen. What ends up happening is that the people quit fighting, right? So if you find a partner who is 100% behind you doing your martial arts and doing your art, that's invaluable, and that's going to allow you to actually do it. And also, and this is what I was telling my student about, is that you should make moves to preserve their opinion of the martial arts, in which case he was debating whether or not he should cancel his trip with his girlfriend for the weekend or come to training on Saturday. I was like, young man, training happens every Saturday. The points you're losing for this trip are not worth it. So, but I mean, it's really important because Laura being 100% behind me, being my co-owner, she actually invested the money we needed to buy the gym for my coaches.
Oh, wow, okay.
And she owned her own business as well at the time, and supported me while I made essentially nothing, being a full-time martial artist. And, she was paying for my art. And in a lot of scenarios, that end up with me being a deadbeat, right? I'm going to be a DJ, I promise. Yeah. He's going to make it.
Sure.
But we kind of switched off, and then when the gym was actually thriving and making money, she went to school, and that was when she did illustration. So we take care of each other. We push toward each other's goals that way, whatever they are. And I think it's really important. And then as Laura has become much more interested in actually practicing martial art in the last 5-6 years, she's a purple belt now. I've been really trying to push her for that, but it's really tough. I don't know if your partner trains, but to be a partner and a coach is a really tough road. So we collaborate as much as possible, and she trains with a lot of our friends and when she travels. So get a lot of her training experiences, because it's really tough to be a coach and listen to someone as a coach and think of them as, of course, an equal.
Sure.
So it's but we elected for the hard mode, in all things, right? Own a small business, check. Have a partner, a life partner, a wife, a husband. Have a wife or a business partner, and then combine all three of those relationships.
You're battle tested at this point. Yeah,
sure.
That's awesome. That's congrats on finding the right person.
Oh no, she's amazing. I'm sure her luckily her superpowers kind of are not ones I have, and then and then vice versa, and we cover each other's most of each other's faults, with our,
sure.
So it's good. We're stronger together, and I think that's hopefully what it can be as a gym as well. So the gym is Bellingham Mixed Martial Arts. Also Zenith BJJ. We're affiliated with Northtown BJJ and my coach Lennon Showalter through Robert Drysdale and Zenith Jiu-Jitsu.
So Zenith, is that? Are you an affiliate of theirs
Yes.
in this space? Okay,
Yeah.
got it. So that's where the ranking lineage would come down through.
Yeah, exactly. So I received my black belt from Mike Simpson, and then we're all affiliated through Kavaka and Drysdale.
Okay,
Yeah.
Got it. No, that's awesome. And so you offer classes for adults and kids, or
We're restarting our kids program. My daughter actually, so Laura's in Texas right now. My daughter is graduating from Air Force, basic military training
Congrats.
this week. I mean, I worked really hard. She's really great, and but she was our kids class instructor, so she's a purple belt with us as well.
Got it.
So she, decided to pursue that. Her grandfather passed away this last year, and he was a U.S. Air Force veteran as an officer and Navy veteran. And so I think she really feels like she's connecting with her grandfather by doing this. But I'm really, really proud of her. I just couldn't get away to go, unfortunately. But it allowed me to do this, so that's good, right?
I appreciate you being here. Yeah, that's right.
And then we also run Battle Grappling together. Battle Grappling is our jiu-jitsu promotion, which we've been running for about 5 years now. Once again, like everything, we built from scratch. We did it from a little show running here in our gym, and we still run in the gym, but now it's a big show. And we're paying athletes, and that's like our big thing.
So are those super fights, or is it a open to all tournament, or?
We do everything. We've done open tournaments, we've done super fights, we do brackets and we always try to have a guaranteed prize for our like advanced brackets or matches. So last time we did an all women's show with $1,000 for a 125 bracket.
Awesome.
It was an 8-women bracket. And then we do ticket sales commission for all of our athletes as well.
Okay.
So
cool.
we try to kind of make sure we all can make money together. That's the goal. We used to do purely based on kind of like merit, or rather we'd give like bonuses based on performance, and we'd love to do that, and we do. The problem is that people don't sell tickets unless there's an incentive. The only way to make the business work, and that's something that we're still kind of like exploring. But we've done everything from gi to no gi, high to low level jiu-jitsu, and we did I think our most professional and I think high level event this last with our all women's show in February. So we're gonna follow that up with our craziest and least professional event, doing car-jitsu. We're calling it vehicular manslaughter.
Yes.
That's going to be March 29th here at the gym.
Awesome.
In my Prius, actually.
Is that right?
Yeah, we're carbon neutral, baby. We believe in the environment.
That's awesome.
Because it doesn't run. So
For real? Okay, so what were the dates on that again?
March 29th is car-jitsu. That's going to be a team event also. So It's not all at once. So it's a quintet. So the first 2 competitors from each team, they're trios. So there's 3 competitors in each team.
Got it.
The first 2 go in. Someone loses, they come out. The next person comes in, and the winner stays on, right? So when you're out of competitors, then your team is eliminated and your team advances. If there's a draw, then you're both eliminated.
Okay.
So it's a fun format. Keeps things really quick. I think it'll be 5-minute matches, and it's gonna be. It makes me really anxious. Like I don't think I will ever do that.
I couldn't handle it.
It feels like a self-defense scenario.
You're right.
And I've had the feedback we've gotten because people have actually been asking for this for a long time. Like we get people saying both as battle grappling, just like can we just do it because it's fun, and then it's like. We had the car, and we were like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's try it out. We'll do anything once, We did I think, as far as I'm aware, the world's first co-ed jiu-jitsu tournament. It was a team event, so teams of 5, and it could be any number of men and women. Men, and it would have been in order of size. So the lightest competitors went, then the winner would go on.
Sure.
But that way we wouldn't have a heavyweight versus a lightweight, because that was always a thing. People would always said, okay, well, what if a tiny white belt woman goes against a black belt heavyweight? And I'm like, first of all, why would you do that to her? Why would you put a white belt like tiny person on your team? The white belt should be like a giant dude, right?
Right.
Because you have like a 185 black belt. That was always my thing. It's that guy can beat anyone up and down, right? The ranks. The white belt giant dude can at least stall you out.
Sure.
Anyway, so but no one had an issue. There's no issue because the people who were closest in size had great matches, regardless of their gender.
Cool.
And it was not an issue because I rolling in the gym as a small guy, I always train with women. And I think it was weird to me when guys would be weird about it. I'm like, it's just a body, dude. Like,
Right. The limbs are there.
Exactly.
Well, that's something I wanted to talk to you about specifically was this concept that I think is really cool about jiu-jitsu, and I wanted your opinion on it. But combat sports, uniquely among sports, I think offer weight classes. Like we don't have a bantamweight football division, we don't have a middleweight basketball or soccer division or anything else. But combat sports, whether it's soccer or whether it's jiu-jitsu or wrestling or boxing or what have you, do offer that. And in particular, jiu-jitsu, wrestling does this too to a degree, judo does, but maybe outside of the context of active sport competition, when we're just training or rolling, during that phase of any academy I've ever been to, you could be 110 pounds and you end up rolling with somebody who's 300 pounds. As long as things are safe and people have the right attitude, we don't view that as like an unfair rolling session. Right. We view it as like, well, how can I creatively solve this problem, or what am I going to get out of this roll? Because you can bring something out of any roll, and I think that's a really cool aspect of jiu-jitsu. And as somebody who's competing at 125 pounds, has that been your experience too, or what?
It's different. Like I try, and I say this all right. I did an absolute division for charity for our friends at Gracie Baja Kirkland. And I went against a guy who's about 280, and after he sprawled on me, I ended up going to kind of just egg mode, which is how I.
You shot on him though?
Yeah, I went low single.
Okay.
So I figured it would be the safest option. And it was not a real match. Like, it doesn't make sense. And he was a good sport about it. He didn't pick me up and throw me out the window. It was for charity. So I talked to him ahead of time too. I was like, hey, can we be chill here?
Right.
Please don't hurt me. But it was, it was a fun experience, and we all had a good laugh. In the gym though, if I'm gonna roll hard, with any intensity, I don't really go above 170 unless I really know you and I know you're safe.
Sure.
And even then, in that roll is usually gonna have to be technical, right? It can't be with actual physicality, because there's a certain level of realism that happens when someone's at your size, and now we can actually apply a contest of strength, right? Otherwise, it's a different game. And I think all those games are beautiful and I like them, but in my casual rolling, unless I know you well, I can't risk that much injury.
Sure.
Working with people who are too big. At this point, I have students who are big, and they can go work with those guys. Go beat up the new guy if they need to, because I just can't risk that for myself. And I also found that whole beat up the new guy thing because he's spazzy or aggressive is what ends up happening is that you just establish that being able to beat someone up is what determines who's right. And that's not really the culture I want. So if I can't have a conversation with you and get you to chill out, then you should go somewhere else.
Sure.
And that's one of the things I love about having a full-time job is I don't care about making money here. Mm-hmm. My bills are paid, so I can kick people out if they're a problem. I don't have any qualms about that because I don't need your money.
Sure.
It's also why we keep our prices super low. They're way under our market because we charge $80 for women.
That's awesome.
To do unlimited classes, and that's because we want our training to be accessible. Yeah. Because I think it's if you want to make money, go do anything else. It's so much easier, guys. Really, this is not a easy way to make a quick buck. It's the opposite. You make a long way to make no money. So I'm just saying, we're just trying to do it because we love to do it, and if we just find a way to make that happen, I'll be able to die a happy man.
Well, then that's a good segue into this next question. What are the things that keep you training? After all these years and all your experience in doing it, what keeps jiu-jitsu fun or interesting or, keeps you attracted to it and still doing it?
If you have the right mindset, there's always so much to learn, and you just keep seeing more and deeper into it. I think it's anything that you can really be interested in. And if I have any philosophy, because I try to stay away from that kind of thing, is some people find that offensive because they have their own philosophy, right? And
sure.
If your philosophy includes an idea that only yours can be correct, I don't want to step on that, right?
Sure.
Once again, consensus reality doesn't matter. You believe you're right. You're absolutely right. You're always right. And I'm always right, and you're always right. The thing for me is about whatever you're actually going to get good at, what's going to stick in your memory is what you pay attention to. Mm-hmm. When I was teaching my daughter math, because I'm a math major, but through all the tears, mostly mine, it was that she found it boring, so she didn't want to pay attention. And when she paid attention, she would do fine, right? And I'm not talking about in class. I'm actually focus on it. Really focus your attention and be 100% present on what you're doing right now. And if you can maintain that, if you can get that at will, if you can command your attention and be able to focus in on what you're doing right now, then your retention of whatever you're doing is going to go up. Right? And that's only really, I think, available to almost all humans on something that we deeply enjoy and care about. I know so many dudes who know every character on Fortnite and their strengths and their weaknesses and all of their stats and all that stuff, right? And did they have to go to Fortnite school? No. They play Fortnite. They obsess over Fortnite. They know everything about Fortnite they can. They practice. And that's what jiu-jitsu is. You have to love it. You have to be obsessed with it. I am a very obsessive person. I get obsessed with music. I'll listen to the same song and repeat over and over again when it's an earworm for me. I'll find a video game or a book and I'm just in it. And then it goes away, right? Like the song goes away, the book is replaced by another book or by another, a video game. But jiu-jitsu never goes away. I never stopped being obsessed by this. And I'm like, if you find something that you enjoy that much, you have to pursue it because nothing else is ever going to matter that much.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, maybe this is, all you psychologists out there, you let me know. Like if you're not going to feel that way about your partner, that's also the same thing. Like most people talk about love. It's like, well, you like lots of people, you're friends with lots of people, and you should be those things with your partner. But are you obsessed with most people? No. Okay, perfect. Like if you care, like I'm like, hey, what are you doing right now? Right, and if I did that to my friend, they'd be like, what are you talking about?
Leave it unread.
Yeah, right. Whereas with my wife, like he didn't check it. No, I'm just kidding. Like, but it's still like, you have to have something that you cannot let go.
You're enamored with.
Yeah, because otherwise, like, if the question is how do I get more out of this, you're wrong, right? It's how do I put more into it? That was always my thing. It's like how do I give more? How do I get more involved? If you want to get more involved, something do it, and that's always that's how I got the gym. The coach said, hey, we need someone to teach a kids class. And I said, I'll do it. Someone said, hey, I need someone to teach Fridays. I said, I'll do it. Hey, we're going to be closing the gym because we're not making any money. I said, hey, I'll buy it. Nice. And the same thing with Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds. How did I get on there? Well, my friend Austin Daffron was competing there. And I said, hey, Eddie Bravo, Instagram. I DM'd him on Instagram. I would love to be an alternate if you need anybody.
Huh?
And he said, okay. 3 days before the event, he's like, hey, dude, fly to Cancun, here's a ticket. And I'm like, boom.
That's awesome.
And, I got my ass kicked. But it was a fun experience.
Sure. Yeah.
But, like, and I was telling someone, like, yeah, I got paid there more than I ever did to fight. And I just had to get slapped by a guy. This is like a scam. Did I know that people get beat up for free?
Okay, so this is going to be an oddball question, but in my social media stalking of you in preparation for this interview, there was one pic on your Instagram where it was like me as a baby punk or something. I think it was what you brought up. And I will say from my own standpoint, so I grew up in as a teenager, like in the punk rock scene. I loved it. Like that was my thing. And I loved the music, but it was also like this community of people that were very much like grassroots, and you could find an empty warehouse and set up a show with a PA, and there were people like publishing Xeroxed black and white zines with interviews and bands, and like there was this aspect of community to that. It was a lot of miscreant kids too, but there was this aspect of community to it that I thought was really cool, and in part what inspired this project, like just going around and instead of interviewing bands with a mohawk, I'm interviewing jiu-jitsu people.
It's really the same thing because I grew up in the exact same community, punk rock and metal kids, and I didn't really do as much of the fashion side of it just because I was pretty ambivalent toward most things, honestly. But I really loved the music and the energy, and really it was just an identity, right? I think, growing up in rural Snohomish County, you either get into drugs or heavy metal music, racism, or some combination, some Venn diagram of all that, right? And for us, it was like we were very anti-racist. Thank you for the record. But we were all searching for this identity and a purpose, right? And like the idea of rebellion and like loud music and gave us something to do and a purpose, and jiu-jitsu felt like, and like martial arts really filled that for me as well. And I think that's what I'm really looking to do. My life's mission is to help other people discover that same meaning, because like to me, like going too deep, like I don't think life has inherent meaning. I think it's you have to create that for yourself. And it's not find it, because I think to me, like when you think about finding meaning, it's like something you're gonna happen upon, right? Like you got lucky and you found it. No, you create it. Like every time you get deeper into something, every time you get deeper into what you are passionate about, what you believe in, you're creating a deeper meaning for yourself in your life, right? Like you have a purpose now, which is to do this thing, right? Like there's a lady, and before I got off TikTok, I'm trying to get away from social media. She got stopped because she was building a tunnel at first under her house, and then she's building a castle now.
Oh, wow.
But she built like a legit tunnel with like railway and like infrastructure, like oxygen and stuff, and like she like, look at engineering. Now she's building an actual castle, like dressed stone, like building blocks, and people are asking why she's doing this, and she's like, "Why? What are you doing?" Right? Like what?
Love it.
Like what are you doing with your life? Like I don't know, because this is meaningful to me. Like I want to build a castle. Like no shit, and like I'm just like yeah, man. Like I want to build a castle too. Just mine's made out of flesh and mats or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was tortured that metaphor to death.
That's profound in my estimation. All right, so final question here. So I like to ask this to everybody who comes onto the channel, especially coaches, and you're dealing with this question on a regular basis anyway. So I'm curious on your perspective. That initial period when people start training jiu-jitsu, I find is it's a vulnerable time where you're getting used to all this close contact. There's a high attrition rate. There's a lot of people drop out because it's hard, because it can be scary, and all those things. What are your words of advice for somebody who's interested in either starting or they just started and you want them to succeed?
Consistency and time are way more important than intensity. That's the guys who come in and they're in, oh man, I'm so into this every day. They're gonna burn out after a few months, right? I have a student who just got his brown belt. He comes in 1 to 3 days a week, every week, for the last 8 years.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like you think about like just time on the mat, you're gonna accumulate so much more than the guy who comes in every class,
Yeah.
but who burns out or has to take a few weeks off to get his mind right, and it's just like so much more important. And like I think it's my only like real path to success is I've outlasted everyone else, like everyone else is dead now. I'm not kidding, but like, they're all retired from the sport because I'm still doing it because I just keep like, I have nothing else to do. Like I gotta build it,
Sure.
So I think that's it. You just focus on something you can maintain. It doesn't have to be a lot, and don't worry about your rate of progress. It's like compound interest. It'll take care of itself, It'll happen.
Just bank that. Yeah.
I
No, I
promise.
love it. That's awesome. I appreciate that answer and the whole interview. This has been a lot of fun,
Thanks
man.
so much, sir.